Yeah.
Yes, we're live, and JK is here. And we got Michael, who we're trying to bring on. But welcome back, everybody. It's the last panel of the day. And my terrible night wish
You must
voice.
be so tired. Like,
Here we are at
It's the
panel
same
number
time.
6, and this has been great fun for today. For those who are just joining for the first time, welcome. Join the fun party by subscribing, because for the next 2 days, we have an additional 11 panels that we will be
Oh,
doing
wow.
on between Saturday and Sunday. And yeah, over 50 authors total coming to read their books, coming to chat about books. And there's some familiar faces on today's panel, but might be new to viewers, and definitely the first time I've had this specific group together on a panel. But we're all here to talk about dark fantasy books, which is my heart and soul and what I love as a USA Today bestselling dark fantasy author. These are my peoples. But we have Chris Main, we have Steve Hugh Westenra, and we have J.K. Divya on, and we were trying to bring Michael on, so hopefully we can get Michael on in just a bit. But for those who don't know you, why don't we just go around? Chris, you can kick us off. We'll go around the circle. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what specific kind of dark fantasy you write, whether that's dark urban or dark epic or fairy tale, and what book or series you feel like you're most known for.
Yeah. Hi everyone, Chris Main. So I write dark fantasy, probably best categorized as kind of a little bit epic, a little bit dystopian dark fantasy. I'm just like a lot of authors. I'm just in love with Stephen King. I'm just obsessed with him and have been since my early days of reading and coming across his books. And I don't think people that don't understand Stephen King don't appreciate all the genres he actually writes in and the variety of his work. But my favorite, being a dark fantasy author, is the Dark Tower series, which I thought is incredible. But yeah, I mean, I'm a professional in marketing and training and all sorts of different things, and a family guy. I'm a dad in Sydney, Australia. So I was talking to my fellow authors, just telling them that I'm actually in the future at the moment at 11 a.m. on Saturday in winter. But yeah, look, I love everything to do with writing, and when life gets out of the way, I do love to get into my dark fantasy stuff. And my series is, which we'll talk about later, but it's sort of a future apocalyptic dystopian re-envisioning of the world, new civilization, new cities that grew out of our old ones. It heralds the return of magic and fantasy into the world. So yeah, we'll go to that later. But that's me. Hi everyone.
That's awesome. I was actually going to say, how many firstborn children does it take for you to do marketing for other authors? Because that's the hardest part of the whole thing for me.
Yeah, and it's so different. Like marketing for in publishing is really different to traditional marketing. Like I used to work for Coca-Cola, and I can market shelf products, but books is really different. There's some similar principles, but it's not easy.
Yeah. Legal disclaimer: I would never trade my firstborn, but just saying.
Yeah.
That's how hard
I was gonna say how much is for a firstborn son, but joking as well.
If my kids ever watch this when they grow up, Mom,
I know.
It was just a joke.
Let's hope we sell enough for therapy.
So with that, we're going to pass over to Steve.
Oh God, I'm supposed to be saying who I am, right? That was the question.
Yes, who you are and what book you feel like people would know most, and
right.
should look for if they don't know you.
Yeah. I am a science fiction fan, mostly fantasy, to be honest, and horror. Not so much science fiction because it scares me because I might have to know like math and things. Um, I love reading science fiction. Just to be clear, I'm just scared that I wouldn't do it justice. Yeah. So I am a fantasy and horror writer, if I'm honest. And I write a lot of anything that's kind of weird. I love combining genres, that kind of thing. Probably anyone watching this, unless you're a family member or friend who knows me from like being alive and my presence in other scenarios, like would know me from Spiffbo. This is my first year entering the self-published blog, fantasy blog off. I always like mess up the acronym. With my political epic fantasy novel, queer political epic fantasy novel, The Wings of Astaroth, which I've entered. It's technically my debut, I guess. I always feel really weird saying that. I don't know why exactly, but it is the first novel that I wrote, and then sort of reworked in a lot of ways and that kind of thing. But I've written other subsequent novels, but they weren't the first one I put out, so I guess that's why it feels kind of weird. Or you may have possibly, if you were around on Twitter earlier, in 2018, I was Pitch Wars contestant, or like contestant is probably a bad way to put it, but like entrant or something like that. Yeah. I'm also an academic. I work on like demons and monsters and teach courses like the history of Satan and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And from Canada.
So cool.
Awesome.
I'm finally one of the cool kids.
The best job.
Yeah, but I'm not a time traveler like you, so you know.
Yeah.
Like,
We can't talk about that. My publisher deliberately asked me not to mention it.
Okay. Yeah, well, I've been convinced for ages that my cousin is a spy, so I also, can't talk about that. So I'm used to keeping things on the down low, unless I like start talking about them during public, like conversations like this one.
Well, if your power goes out, we know you went too far.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, Steve can diagnose whatever's wrong. Hold on.
Oh, God.
JK, it is so good to have you back on the channel. You came on and we've done an interview and everything, and I was so blown away. JK's books are, first book is one that I read and earned one of the very few, like under 30, I think, 5-star reviews that I gave out last year. It's a whole new take on Selkies and fantasy in a whole like dark, but not necessarily focused on a romance way. So JK, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your series?
Thank you so much for the very nice introduction. And yeah, I was so excited. I almost cried when you told me it was one of your 5 stars. So it was amazing. So I'm JK Davia. I'm an author from the USA. I'm Marylander. And my debut novel, A Sea of Blood and Tears, is a dark fantasy mythology inspired novel. I like to say it is The Secret of Roan Inish meets Eaters of the Dead, which is one of my favorite movies and one of my favorite books. And it's the first book in my series. I'm currently working on, I go out of order. That's just how I do my life. I'm actually working on a prequel novella that should come out this winter. It's almost done. That will focus on the berserkers in my story. And then, as you know, A Sea of Blood and Tears was actually based on the backstories for the main novel. And that novel, the main one, is going to be coming out probably winter 2024.
Yay! I don't have a super long way to find out what happens because, that ending. Oh, goodness. So, yeah, we're going to see if I can bring Steve in. Or not Steve, you're already in. We're having Michael in. It's been a long day, you guys. Michael, are you here?
That's a great question. Am I here?
Yay, we hear you.
I can hear, but I'm worried if I have video on that it'll completely destroy my chances of sticking around. I tried to do it on my phone, but StreamYard is blocked, and I've been trying to figure out how to unblock it, and I do not understand where to go in my phone. So this is what you get, people. Sorry. What
Well, it's
do I have?
fantasy
Is there
for a
a
reason.
question?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we are going through
Not tech
talking just
support.
a little bit about who you are, what kind of dark fantasy you write, like urban or epic or romance or whatever, and what book or series you feel like you're most known for.
Oh,
Oh
Oh,
no.
no.
Oh,
there it is.
Very gay. Okay. Maybe. Technology.
Fuck.
We can
It's
hear you.
okay.
yeah.
So this
We could
is
just make up who you are
Can
and
you hear me?
and-
Yeah.
yeah, this is Michael. Michael is a 9 competition.
I'm ruining this. I'm gonna leave. I'm sorry, everybody. Have
Aw.
fun.
Oh,
I am
no,
totally
it's okay. We'll try to connect with you soon.
Price of Power. Check it out if you. I don't want to drag everybody down. I got to sacrifice for the flock. I don't even know if you can hear this. I hope you
we can.
do.
We can.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can hear you. Yeah, we'll try to work something out another time though. Yeah, so Price of Power is Michael's Spiffbo 9 book for this year. It's got an amazing cover with an even more amazing backstory. If you did not catch the panel that Michael is on about in the Spiffbo playlist on my channel right now, there are 22 panels that I did with Spiffbo entrants, and you can catch up on that and see more about that and hear from Michael and see Michael's face. Video too. But we're gonna move right along and hope that everything goes a little bit better, knocking on wood, technology wise. But what we've been talking about today in all of these panels has been what brought you sort of the indie route, because we have a large variety of authors coming from different stages in their writing journey. We've had authors, we had one on Hannah this morning who said that she started in traditional and then got an agent and then went hybrid for a little bit and then went full indie, which is sort of the reverse of where a lot of us start. And then we had people come on who are indie and went the other way. So with all the options for your books, what drew you to doing this?
Yes, I might kick off. So 2 reasons. Like the most obvious one is, just the challenge of breaking through traditional. But I actually managed to get early on, like I'm still promoting pretty much, so kind of like Steve. This is Heretic, if you can see that. Heretic, it's all blurred, but is going back to my first work, and it's a much reworked version of it because I was just so in love with the world and the characters, and it sort of evolved into where I sort of wanted it to be. And with traditional, I got some traction at the start, and as I started to learn more and more about traditional publishing, I found that it affected my writing and my creativity because my brain was always trying to second guess what would give me success in traditional publishing as opposed to what I wanted to do. So I was always, I was reading all this stuff and I was learning. I was like, well, no, if you want to get, published, it needs to be this, and it needs to be this length of a series or this many words or all of this, marketing stuff and commercial stuff that I felt as a reader didn't always apply. I just thought, well, that's not necessarily true for all readers. But I could understand the publisher's business model, and I thought, that's affecting my creativity. I'm second guessing myself and trying to shoehorn into this. And then I thought, well, if I go indie, I've got a better chance of getting it on published and getting people to read it. So it wasn't about me being a multi-million-dollar best-selling author. I wanted people to read it. I wanted to get it out there for people to read. And whether that was 10 people or 1,000 people or 100,000 people, if people were reading my book, and especially people that I didn't know, that blew my mind. Whereas people in other countries reading my book and saying they enjoyed it, that was it. That's it for me. And that's, although I'd love to do this full time, I'm loving that I can do it as a part-time hobby, whatever at the moment, and continue to write and get it in the hands of people the way that what my vision is and what my readers want to see as well. So I get their feedback and I'm like, oh, that can give me a bit more of a buzz and momentum as well. So that's why I love doing indie. And we can go places where others, I think there's an element of real excitement in an indie book where you don't know what to expect, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working on some merch for the New Year's Blitz, and I haven't shared this on any of the other panels, so you guys are hearing it first. But I want to come up with a shirt for the New Year's Eve Blitz. This will be the third one that says Indie Read Without Borders or Read Without Boundaries. I can't decide which one I want to go with because I really do. I agree with you, Chris.
I like that.
You know, we indie readers are brave. We're willing to read more in some ways than necessarily what's safe by the gatekeepers. But then we also expect the high standards of the gatekeepers as readers. So as writers, that puts a lot of pressure on all of us. Oh, hi, Kitty. Steve, what's your familiar's name?
This is Dante.
Oh,
yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, he's very large and in charge. He's very gentle.
Is Dante a demon or a traditional feline?
I mean, he's less demonic than one of our previous cats. So
okay.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, he's been on his sort of subterranean voyages to hell, as one does. Our other cat's called Virgil, so but inappropriately is younger than Dante and like less experienced and stuff. So it doesn't entirely. Naming doesn't entirely work, but
see, I'm picturing Dante is like the one who's like, I'm gonna be running around doing all the reckless stuff, and Virgil's the one who's like, you shouldn't do that, you know.
No. You might see Virgil at some point. I can't close this door because the cat litter's in here, so you'll probably see Virgil at some point too.
The honest truth of a pet owner, which also happens to be authors a lot of times.
Yeah.
So Steve, what brought you indie?
I just want to say first off, I love everything Chris said. Like, just 100% agree with everything that you said, and it spoke so much to me. I can't remember exactly what I said during the Spiffbo interview, so apologies if I repeat anything. It's been a long and very strange, which I think is the case for most writers, kind of journey toward indie for me. So I was always interested in it because my sister's partner, when I was first I'd first finished The Wings of Astaroth about 10 years ago, was an indie writer and had kind of decided right from the get-go that he didn't want to be involved with trad because he had researched a lot. He was very smart about it all. He kind of knew the drawbacks and the benefits also of going indie and the artistic control that he would have. And I was just so daunted by the amount of labor of kind of marketing and all of the things we were all familiar with. I'm not good at this stuff. I'm not, particularly good at socializing or social media, although I do think I've got better. And so I knew I very much wanted to go trad. And I think also in my mind, I still was holding on to that sort of idea of like, well, it's a seal of approval, right, from somebody with authority. And you kind of can't get away from that sense to some extent, or at least that's what I'm kind of coming to terms with now, is like, it's hard for me, even intellectually knowing that it's not a meritocracy, that trad is not a meritocracy, which has been grilled into my brain over and over, that there is a sort of prestige associated with it. And so a lot of my journey has kind of been, talking myself down from that. Because I suppose when I first started out, looking into, okay, well, what do I need to do to get traditionally published? How do I get my book in front of editors? And in this case, it was The Wings of Astaroth. And, I found some advice from a well-known Canadian science fiction author online that said, any agent you can get as a debut writer isn't an agent you want, was the advice on his website. which turned out to be terrible advice. Because I was like, I'm just not going to try and get an agent then. I'm just going to send my book to Tor. And I hadn't actually finished the book when I sent it to Tor, because I looked online and I saw that their wait times were really long. And I'm very impatient. And I was like, you know what? I can finish my book in the 6 months it'll take them to respond to me. And they're only asking for the first, like, you know, half of the book or whatever. Can't remember how much it was. At the time, you had to print it out too. So, like, I had to go to the post office and print out this huge stack. And it was really bizarre. And I was like, I've got tons of time. And also, they're probably going to reject it anyway. So I got a request from Tor for the full, and I hadn't finished the book. And I was like, how long can I reasonably wait before sending them the rest of the book? And then did that. And unfortunately, that was kind of the high, you know, point of that whole exchange. With
You got
Tor.
A full request from Tor.
Congratulations! I did. That was really awesome. Then they lost the manuscript, and I took ages to sort of like chase them down on it too, because like I was so nervous, and so like I didn't know when was an appropriate time. I didn't want to annoy them. I was very much like, I am the lowly writer. They are like the big, you know, publishers. So I can't remember how long it took me. It probably took me like a year to reach out to them. And they were like, oh, we've lost it. We moved offices.
Oh, no.
Can you email it? And I was like, oh, great. I didn't have to send another like stack of paper and pay for that. This is fantastic. So I emailed it to them. And then I waited another long time, of course. Can't remember how long it was. And then finally reached out. And I got a rejection on it, which was, you know, like, I mean, it was personalized and it was obvious, like, it wasn't copy pasted or anything, but they'd misspelled like both my name and the name of the book. And it just left me with this really sour taste in my mouth. Like, you couldn't even bother, like, after all of this long time that you've had this, to like, you know, and it was this one particular editor, and I'm sure they were super busy, and I'm sure they're probably a really nice person. So I don't want to, you know, I don't even think they're with Tor anymore, but, it was frustrating. And then I tried to find an agent, and going on that same bad advice, I was like, I don't know who's a reputable agent. So I queried one agent and waited for a year for a rejection from the one agent. And then sort of like, I basically learned what I was doing. I'm quite, I would say, knowledgeable about querying now. I have like listened to all the podcasts. I've had professional mentorship in both Pitch Wars and another mentorship program I was lucky to get into with Marianne Marlowe called Query Fest. You know, like I know my stuff. Like I don't feel like I'm aggrandizing myself in some way by saying that at this point. Like I kind of know to some degree what I'm doing. But the message I've got again and again on multiple books at this point is sort of, you know, this is ready, or this, you know, is ready to be published, or like, I would take this on, or you're going to get an agent with this book, I'm sure, but it's not right for me. And just again and again, like, you hear that enough times that you start to think, well, the problem, the common denominator here is me and my writing and the themes I'm interested in. Possibly it's the fact that I'm queer, although I've had a lot of really supportive conversations, emails with agents. So, you know, I don't want to besmirch them either. But just, you know, it's exhausting. And I'm sure you all realize, you all have felt this probably at some point as well. It's like completely demoralizing. The system as it currently stands completely chews up authors. It doesn't give a shit about them, if I'm, you know, going to be frank about it. And like Chris was saying, like, a lot of it is about these days sort of churning out stuff that is exactly the same, beat for beat. It's Save the Cat. It's, you know, it's not taking risks. And I'm just not interested in that. I don't see any point in writing if I'm not taking a risk of some kind. So indie for me is exciting in that way. There's still that kind of sadness I feel of kind of leaving behind something that I think I had put on a pedestal, perhaps wrongly. But yeah, sorry, that was a bit of like an intense rant, but, but yeah.
So true.
Right? Because we have so many authors that watch these. And I was saying on an earlier panel today, I'm a pitch coach as part of my day job, and I've deliberately not pitched the books. I haven't never even tried to pitch them on some of these, because I know part of my job is researching the market trends. What agents are signing today, is books they're expecting to come out usually in 2 to 5 years.
Yeah.
It's not what's going to come out this year. So looking at what's supposed to be coming and everything, and what we were talking about on the earlier panel is it takes a lot of self-awareness to know where your target audience is. And that is a huge strength of going indie, because you can see, like in my case with The Violet Twisted Fate a couple of years ago, I knew it was not going to be something that was going to be signed in that time. It wasn't trending up, and it needed a very niche audience. And it did a whole lot better indie than I think it would have done at that time going traditional. But every single book is different. And like to your point, Steve, your book is very original, and it's got a lot of concepts that you don't see in that mainstream stuff, which I think makes it better in some ways for each audience. But it's hard as a pitch coach to look at an author and go, hey, have you thought about going indie? Not because I've gone indie and love it, but because your book might find more readers indie.
Absolutely.
You have the choice to bring it to them, you know? So
Yeah.
I don't think there's any shame whatsoever in viewing our books as more than our dreams, but as actual products. And because the publishers are looking at them as products for their business. And if we look at them as, okay, this is my dream, but it's also something I'm looking to market. And if I'm going to market it, where is it going to get the most visibility? Where am I going to connect with the most people? And if that's indie, there's no shame in that at all.
Oh, absolutely. And like, I just want to say too, like, with Ashtaroth, like I was actually very fortunate to have a quite positive response to it with my initial querying, which is somewhat surprising because it's like, as anyone who has picked it up so far knows, it's very, very long. It's like, I know it's too long. It's like too long for a book. But it actually got more traction than my like 120K epic fantasy that was very much on point for the market at that moment. And, you know, so it's kind of bizarre, but definitely better in an indie space, I think, because I serialized it online and because I went indie with it, I was actually able to expand it and make it longer, which I think, you know, a lot of people probably disagree with me, but I think that's kind of what that particular story needed. Was actually some room to breathe, just because it has a lot of like POV characters and stuff like that. But absolutely, yeah, like finding your audience is the tricky thing, but also like identifying who that audience might be as well. So
yeah, thank you for sharing so candidly too.
Sorry.
I remember binging a lot of these as a new author just a couple of years ago, like soaking in everything and going, how do you know which way to go? Like, this is gold. And so, JK, your book is another one of those that like takes those norms and bends them and twists them in original ways. How did you end up going indie with yours?
Well, first off, it's really hard to come in after these two. I loved everything they said. And Steve, you are my query sibling, but I am the much less successful one that nobody talks about. So I did query. And like Steve, I did it before my manuscript was finished because I was very impatient. So when you said that, I was like, oh, there's my person. Yes. Like I did query, and I got like one request back or two, and it was like, it's not done, which didn't go over well. Lesson learned. And then also, as you know, my novel is not the typical length of fantasy novels. Fantasy novels tend to be like at least 80K to, 120 or more. My novel is barely out of novella territory. And then also, as you said, like with my book, I sort of bended some of the norms there, and I really just wanted my story to be my story. There were a couple scenes in there that I felt like probably wouldn't fly traditionally, and I just really loved them and wanted them. And when you go indie, you can do whatever you want. It's your story. You don't have to worry about somebody saying, no, you have to change it, or no, this isn't going to be popular, because it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, like, do I want to be a bestseller? Yes, but ultimately I want to love my book, and I want my book to be my book. I want it to be my story. And that's really all that matters. Yeah.
That was really powerful.
Oh, sorry.
I just want to say that. Yeah. I think that thing about, like, you want to like your own book at the end of it, right? Like you don't want to come out with something and it's got your name on it, but like nothing in it is anything that you can stand behind. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I don't want that.
I totally agree with what you were saying, Steve and JK. It's about writing to what speaks to you, your art. The marketing can come at the end. But when you're writing, when you're in that art piece, it needs to be what you're writing for yourself and for the reader, not writing to a publisher or a business model. And I love what you both said about that. Not about what's a fantasy book length meant to be, or how many, you know, should have in a series, and where is this going? And you know, it's like, well, it's what you know you've created. It's what it has a life of its own, and then having to make that fit something else just doesn't work. It's and then you feel like you've betrayed your muse or whatever it is that's pushing you with this brilliant imaginative story. It's almost like, you know, I know a lot of authors feel like me in that you're almost recounting something from another life. You know, it's almost like it just comes. It's like you've lived it, or it's somewhere in. And then once you have to adapt that to something else, it feels like you've lost the integrity of it, and it feels like you've sold out. You know, so indie's brilliant in honouring the art. The marketing can just come at the end of it. You can say, rightio, this is the piece of art. How do we sell this to people to make it, give it its justice, so people understand what it is when you pick it up? And if that only speaks to 10 people, then that's the 10 people that it needs to go to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the wheel has popped up. And Steve, I was saying before we went live, Steve has actually watched some of these. So
I know what's happening.
But we've never done the wheel on any of the past.
I haven't done the wheel.
So on this wheel are some for fun questions. Oh, you can't see the wheel?
I'm surprised that they don't have.
Can you guys see?
I can see it.
Yeah, I'll go the wheel.
Yeah, I can't read the words,
we're
but I
gonna
can see
spin
the
it.
colors.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to spin the wheel, and whatever prompt pops up is a little for fun tidbit about our story that we are going to talk about. Everybody ready? Here we go. Your main character's favorite place in the world is where and why?
Okay, yeah.
That's a hard one.
I think I've got an answer for this one, Katherine. So my main character is Alex. They got I guess they were thrown out of their home. So he lived in a version of a future version of what is now Alexandria. So they were a sea-based people, a sea-based village. And for him, his favorite place in the world is home. But what is sad for Alex is that, like a lot of the hero's journey, I guess, is he can't really ever go home because his home's not there. The people have been dispossessed. They've been, a lot of his family was murdered in raids, and his friends and family. So, it just doesn't exist anymore. So part of his journey is finding, can he actually find home, the concept, rather than that same place in time where he felt that. And, and it's a bit cliche because there is the group of adventurers that become his family, but it's not really traditionally how what these relationships are and who they are and what it becomes. So so there's still that question around, where will that be found, or is it much more tragic in that he has to realize that he just can't ever go back there, but has to, like many of us, it's that coming of age where we create our own version of home, new home, and the family that we create moving forward. So, favorite place for him, seaside. He wants to smell the sea, wants to hear the sea, smell those fishy aromas, right, from a fishing village. Yeah, hasn't been there for a long time.
Has he met J.K. Divya's book?
They would get along well.
Yeah.
So, J.K., enlighten us. Where is your main character's favorite place?
So I have three main characters, sort of. So I'll let you pick if you want Iona, Einar, or Bjorn.
I think, well, you can enlighten us on Iona's, but I'm pretty sure that
you know where that is.
A little straightforward. So let's throw Bjorn in there too.
All right. So I have my story is told in three different points of view. Probably more so who's considered the main character is Iona, who is a Selkie woman. And then you have two Viking warriors and berserkers, Bjorn and Einar. So for Bjorn, he's essentially a child soldier. And so his place isn't actually a physical location. It's a person. And his favorite place would be in the presence of his younger brother, Stellan. That's with all the trauma he's gone through and his life as essentially a enslaved warrior soldier, his brother is really the only place that he has where he can feel any sort of comfort or love.
Yeah,
it's really beautiful.
It's obviously the sea, which is why I was saying to Chris, I was like, have they met?
Yeah, it's like it was going to be the sea.
And Steve, how about yours?
Should I say I love your guys' answers. My book is also set by the sea. Yeah. And my pictures book was actually a Viking inspired book too. So I feel like our books that had 3 POVs, I feel like our books would be friends.
This panel was meant to be.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Kismet. So my book's multi-POV as well, although it has a lot more. The Wings of Astaroth has a lot of POVs, an embarrassing number. So instead of like the main character, because there's one character that has kind of more POVs than other characters, which was intentional. I'm actually going to choose a different character because I feel like she just has a much stronger tie to place. All of the characters are really invested and in the particular city they live in. Called K. Masson, but there's one particular character called Quella, who is a princess of the royal family, and she's at the start of the, in the prologue she's a child, but in sort of the main timeline, she's an adult, and her husband has recently died, and there will be some spoilers, so if anyone doesn't want any spoilers, her husband was not a nice man. He was abusive, and she's terrified when he dies that her father is going to force her into a second marriage, possibly even with her brother-in-law, who she also knows is not a nice man. So in desperation, she joins one of few priesthoods that requires celibacy and not sort of remarrying as part of the order's kind of vows, I guess you could call them. And so the temple space of that particular temple ends up very much being kind of, even though it's this kind of enclosed like environment that we would normally think of as being constraining, ends up being really freeing for her. And this is where we get into kind of more spoiler territory as well. Is that through it's quite early on in the book, but she befriends a fellow priestess at this temple, and the temple is oriented around this kind of goddess of the underworld and sort of women's secrets and that kind of stuff. She befriends this fellow priestess, and it ends up being like the lesbian temple, like it's full of lesbians. That's probably the best way to put it. And she ends up sort of beginning a relationship with this other woman who is a trans woman. And it ends up being very much a source of kind of freedom and strength for her. And she sort of comes to terms with herself, and I think her identity and what she wants out of life, and even just the fact that she can have wants at all in an environment in which she's not expected to have those. She's not really allowed to unless you're a certain type of person. And she's also kind of more of a shy, demure sort of person as well. So her kind of like retaining, her sense of self and the fact that she's a quieter person generally at the same time as sort of finding freedom in this space, I think was something that I was important to me, at least, to try and, I'm not sure capture is the right word because that implies that it's really out there somewhere and that I'm capturing something that's real, but that I wanted to portray, I guess. And just sort of the value that I'm not myself religious, but that a religious space and a religious calling can have for an individual as well, and how that can spaces that might be considered popularly to be constraining might actually be freeing in another sense, depending on your background.
I love that play on it, the symbolism on it. Yeah, that's deep, Steve.
Yeah.
That is
I
deep.
want to do my answer again. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like now I want to go watch the recording of the replay so I can like absorb it all a second time. But no, that's great because it sort of mixes that JK's, home is a person along with a place or, favorite place is a person and not just a physical location, which is fantastic. And I feel bad because my dark epic fantasy, the Lord's Gambit series, the first one, each one follows a different main character. They're in the same world, but completely different mortal main character. The first one, there is no sea, really. I mean, it's hinted at very, very briefly, but I don't feel like Narya really has a place in Oracle of Life. Narya is not welcomed anywhere, and even among the divines, like the people she was supposed to rule, threw her out, wanted her dead because she's like, hey, the goddesses we serve have prophesied that they're going to destroy all of us. She's an oracle. And nobody wanted to hear that, so they send her out to die. She doesn't necessarily like the desert where they send her. She doesn't really, when she goes back home, she's not jaded anymore. And she's like, this isn't the place I thought it was, so she doesn't really like it there. And I don't know. I feel like for her, she sort of has to find a place to like anymore because everything she would have liked is gone. Like you were saying, Chris, it's like there's not really much left. So she's sort of in that looking phase a little bit. But yeah, so I'm super excited to have met all of you and hear more about your books. Before we go, though, I want to hear what is coming between now and the end of this year. Because whenever we do these blitzes, it's so nice to hear from people like JK, who was on in the New Year's. What's happened in the last 6 months, and where do you see yourself 6 months from now? Like, do you have events? Do you have more publishing plans? Are you writing? What's up in your writing world?
I'll just go kick right in. So for me, the next 6 months. So my book started out as a really long novel, and but too long. Like it was like 200,000 words, and I thought that it'd be better broken up into a trilogy, and so that's what I did, and it will eventually be an ongoing series, but. So this is actually just book one. Book two hasn't been released yet, but it's written. But I just need to now edit it and get it out there. So I'm really keen to get book two out. And book two is kind of my favorite part because book one obviously has a lot of setup. But book two is where things really start to take hold, and it's my favorite part of the story. So I'm keen to get that out, and really excited to see what people say when they read it. But also I've got, once book two gets out, I hope to sort of get more readers on board, because then I'll throw book one out for free, and then that way, the usual sort of model. And have book one free, and and then hopefully then people can come across my work, and if they like it, then they can buy into book 2, and then go from there. So that's my next 6 months is that, and I want to do a little bit of just some other little experiments that I've we've always got ideas, don't we? So there's a couple of things that just that will sidetrack me, but some other ideas I've got for some stories and whatnot in different genres. But yeah.
So if you're watching and you want to get enough people so that Chris puts out book 2 and gives us book 1 for free,
yes,
you can find all the links in the description box to all the authors here, Chris and Steve and JK, and I've dropped Oracle of Life in there too because it's 99 cents through August 1st. So you can check everybody's books out there and give everybody follows. I wanted to drop that before I forget it. Steve, what's going on with you through the end of the year?
I have too many projects and not enough time and no money. So yeah, probably relatable, I think. So I'm currently still sort of technically querying a book, my very, very different queer horror comedy, The Erstwhile Tyler Kyle, which is kind of like, if you've seen BuzzFeed Unsolved or Ghost Files, it's kind of that, but super gay. So I'm technically still sort of shopping that around. It's with an editor who I'm waiting to hear back from, and regardless of whether or not they take it, I really respect the press, so I'd be excited for them to, but also it's fine if they don't. When they don't, I'd like to self-publish that, and I'd hope to be able to do that by the end of the year. I'm also at the same time working on writing the sequel to that book, and I'm going to start serializing the sequel to The Wings of Astaroth, my Spiffbo book, in the coming months. So I was serializing that for free online with early access on my Patreon, which has 3 subscribers, my former boss, my mom, and one of my friends. So, but I make $23 off of it every month, which is mostly my mom.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
Use Patreon. Hurry.
Yes.
You
two can be amongst.
Steve before Steve becomes so big that they don't know anybody else's names anymore.
So that's mostly what I'm doing, but it's too many little things, to be honest. Like, I'm also kind of technically writing a prequel to like The Wings of Astaroth about, like, if anyone watching has read any of it, the High Priest character Samelko, who opens the book, there's a prequel series I was hoping to write about him, and so I started writing that, and it's too many things. That's it.
Awesome. JK, so we talked a little bit about what was going on at the beginning of this year. What's gone on in the last 6 months, and what new is coming?
Not as much as I had hoped would be going on, but no. So I have 3 projects I'm working on. My novella, which will be titled Berja, that should be coming out this winter. My fantasy series, it's gonna stay indie. It's gonna stay with me. It's very dear to my heart. So look for that. Hopefully coming out before Christmas, and that's going to be a novella prequel to A Sea of Blood and Tears that will focus on the origins of the Berserkers. And then I'm also working on a mystery thriller novel called We Need to Talk About Grandma. And Grandma's got some secrets. So, that one, I actually am using a writing coach for that one, who I really, really enjoy, and I'm excited for that. And that'll probably come out next year. And then obviously the main novel, Becoming Haminja, that is probably, I'm hoping, going to come out the end of next year. That's going to be a much larger novel than what A Sea of Blood and Tears was. And that will be that's going to be the end of the story. So I may play around with maybe a couple more novella prequels with that one, but Becoming Haminja will end the story for Bjorn, Anna, Einar, and Naya. Yeah.
No. I say no because JK's books are dark, like, for a reason. So if you're looking for happily ever afters, there's potential happy pronows for some characters and not happily ever afters for others. So
I'm definitely running to buy these and Chris's as well afterwards.
Yeah,
Because like
same.
I'm completely sold now.
I'm
Like
like Googling you guys. Like, I don't know if I keep typing. Yeah.
I tried to find you guys on Instagram when I saw your names on the list. I tried to do some stalking, but I couldn't find you, and I'm unfortunately only on Instagram. So
Okay.
I'm not on Insta. I'm on other stuff.
I
But
have
you
one, but
follow
I
them
don't
on
know how to use it.
Amazon.
Yeah.
Give them a follow on Amazon.
see, Twitter like gave me too much anxiety, and Facebook kicks me off after a day because I'm always smiling and something. So Instagram, you know. So here we are.
I'll try and find you on Instagram because I have one, but I don't really know how it works.
Okay.
So I don't know what I honestly can't remember what my name is on it. So
I don't understand Instagram. You can follow my TikToks. No, I'm kidding. I don't do TikToks.
Chris, do you have dark fantasy dances?
Yeah. But one other thing I was going to say, I'm looking into, and I know this is the dreaded acronym AI. I'm looking into AI because what I want to do with it is I want it to be like my sort of like my research partner. I'm going to feed into ChatGPT every scene of my novel and tell it all about it. And then I'm going to feed every scene in. And then when I'm writing number 2, I'm going to query it. I'm going to say, in what scene did, Alex wear the brown shoes kind of thing? Like I want to use it as a sort of a reference, querying my own previous book and see how well that can work. So, that's going to be my experiment going into book 2. I'm going to be using AI to have it as a resource so I can not have to troll through the book and try and remember stuff. I can say, hey, what do you think about this idea? Like, So I'm going to use it sort of like a sounding board and a research partner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Telling you where things were in a previous book would be an actually useful tool. I'm very anti-AI, but that actually would be useful as opposed to theft.
And it is like if I think of it as an assistant, like it really and if you think about if I had someone I could employ to help me with my writing, what would I want them to be doing? And it'd be just like, hey, what do you think about this idea? Or they wouldn't need to be a super fan who knew my book backwards. And I'd be like, do you remember this bit? Yeah, what happened there? And just for
what color was the side character's eyes or something?
That's what we developmental editors are for.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah.
It's like come back all these years later. Hey, on this page you said their eyes was this color, and here you're saying their eyes are this color.
Okay.
I had one chapter in my Pitch Wars book. I can't remember if it was my very patient mentor or if it was my partner that caught it, where the sun rose and set. This is Virgil. Within
Hi, Virgil.
it set within the span of one chapter, which took 2 hours. It rose and set. Because I just like to have dramatic things happen during sunrise and sunset, like you do. But I just have no concept of time or anything in real life or in fiction. So, catching that stuff would be really helpful.
It's a metaphorical sunset. Yeah.
Yes, there we go. Yeah. Yes, the sunset of our times or something.
Well, thank you all so much. I'm so excited to have gotten to chat with all of you. I'm so sorry that Michael's didn't work, but Michael's links are in the description box too. So in all the excitement of our books, please don't forget to check out Michael's. At least take a look at that cover and see if the cover doesn't make you want to read more about Michael's like it did with me. But seriously, I wish you all the best with your writing and publishing and events and contests over the next 6 months. And I hope to see some of you back for the New Year's Blitz.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
You've all got new fans in me, and thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you all for joining. This is a wrap for the first day's panels, but come back tomorrow. We have another, I want to say it's 6 panels tomorrow. and 5 Sunday.
Oh, wow.
It might be 5 tomorrow and 6 Sunday. But we have another slew of panels tomorrow, including live reads and some more fantasy of all different kinds. So subscribe to Meet New Authors, and I will see you then. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.